10 stories to free your mind. In ancient India, there lived a great king named Milinda, known in Greek history as Menander. He was wise, curious, and powerful, yet questions about life and death still troubled him. One day he met the monk Nagasena. Their conversation became one of the most profound dialogues in Buddhist literature. It was not just a debate, it was a journey of awakening. Today we walk through 10 key stories from their dialogue. Each is a step toward freeing your mind from fear, clingings, and confusion. Take a slow breath. Let's begin. Story 1, The Chariot of Self. Dawn broke gently over the ancient city of Sagala. The palace was quiet except for the soft flutter of doves on the terrace. Inside a grand hall scented with sandalwood, King Milinda waited with restless curiosity. For many nights he had pondered one question. What is the self? Was there truly an enduring soul, or was life only fleeting thoughts and sensations? When the venerable monk Nagasena entered, his ochre robe glowing in the morning light, the king bowed respectfully. Venerable Nagasena, the king began, people speak of a soul, an eternal self that travels from birth to birth, but I cannot grasp what that self really is. Tell me, is there a permanent I? Nagasena smiled and asked calmly, Great king, how did you come here today? I came in my royal chariot, replied the king. Then explain to me, said the monk, this chariot of yours, what is it? Is the chariot the wheels? No, venerable sir. Is it the axle, the frame, the reins, the yoke? No, none of those parts alone. Is it the sum of all those parts? The king hesitated. Not exactly. It is not merely a heap of parts. Nagasena continued. Great king, when we carefully search, we find no chariot apart from these parts, and no chariot inside them. The word chariot is only a convenient name for a collection assembled in a certain way. It is a concept useful for travel and conversation, but not an independent entity. The king leaned forward. Are you saying the self is like the chariot? Exactly so, Nagasena answered. What we call a person is a collection of ever-changing aggregates. Body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. They arise together through causes and conditions like the parts of a chariot assembled for a journey. But when you search for an unchanging core, a permanent I, you find only emptiness. The king furrowed his brow. But if there is no enduring self, who feels joy and pain? Who bears the fruits of karma? Who will be reborn? Nagasena paused, letting the question settle like dust in the sunlight. Great king, he said softly, when you light one lamp from another, is the second flame the same as the first? No, but without the first, the second would not exist. Just so, the monk explained. Each moment of consciousness conditions the next. There is continuity without a fixed core. The one who acts and the one who reaps the result are connected in a stream of causes, yet there is no permanent owner of that stream. A quiet understanding dawned on the king. He looked inward and sensed that what he called I was indeed a flowing process. Sensations flickering like fireflies, thoughts rising and passing like ripples on water. Nagasena concluded, when we release the illusion of a solid self, fear softens. Birth and death become waves on a vast ocean. Then compassion can blossom because we see that every being is part of the same endless stream. The king closed his eyes. For a long while, neither spoke. The morning sun climbed higher, but within that hall there was only stillness, the stillness of a mind beginning to taste freedom. Story 2, The Lamp of Continuity. That evening, the monastery courtyard was bathed in moonlight. King Milinda returned, still marveling at the teaching of the chariot, but a new question pressed upon him. Venerable Nagasena, he began, If there is no unchanging soul, how can there be rebirth? When a person dies, who is it that appears in another life? Nagasena gestured toward a small oil lamp flickering beside them. Great King, imagine lighting one lamp from another. Is the new flame identical to the old? No, Venerable Sir, but the new flame could not exist without the first. Precisely, said Nagasena. Rebirth is like that. The next life is neither the same nor entirely different. It is a continuation of conditions, karma, memories, mental tendencies, just as one flame lights another. The king considered this, but doubt lingered. If the person who is born is not the same one who died, how can they receive the results of past actions? Nagasena replied with patience, Great King, think of a river flowing from the mountains. The water at the source is not the same as the water at the mouth, yet we call it by one name. Likewise, the stream of consciousness flows, carrying seeds of deeds and intentions. What ripens later is linked to what was sown, even though no single drop remains. The monk continued, Karma is not a ledger kept by a hidden self. It is a natural law like gravity. When causes are planted, results follow, whether or not you cling to the idea of a permanent me. The king looked at the lamp again. The gentle flame swayed but did not break, a dance of change and continuity. Nagasena invited him to a brief contemplation. Close your eyes, Great King. Follow one breath from beginning to end. Now notice. Each moment of breath is new, yet the breathing continues. So too with mind and life. Change is constant, but the pattern of cause and effect remains unbroken. A sense of wonder filled the king. He realized that death is not annihilation but transformation, a passing of light from lamp to lamp. Nagasena concluded with a serene voice, When we understand this, fear of death loses its edge. We live more carefully, sowing wholesome seeds, knowing that every thought and action will bear fruit, if not here, then beyond. The courtyard fell silent, except for the soft hiss of the lamp's flame. King Milinda bowed deeply, feeling as though a heavy weight had lifted from his heart. Story 3. The Arrow of Thought. After the profound insights of the chariot and the lamp, King Milinda still had questions stirring like restless winds. One afternoon, he and Venerable Nagasena sat in the quiet garden of the monastery. The air was warm and filled with the scent of jasmine. The king broke the silence. Venerable Nagasena, if there is no permanent self, who controls our thoughts? Every day I plan, I choose, I act. It feels as though I steer the ship of my mind. How is that possible if there is no enduring I? Nagasena looked toward the archery ground where soldiers practiced. A distant archer released an arrow that sliced the air with a sharp whistle. Great King, he began gently, imagine an archer who draws his bow and releases an arrow. Once the string is loosed, can he call the arrow back? No, replied the king. The arrow travels on its own. Thoughts are like that, said Nagasena. A thought arises from many conditions, perceptions, past impressions, desires, and the subtle winds of the mind. You may set the conditions through intention and attention, but once the thought arises, it moves by its own momentum. The king frowned. Yet when I decide to think of my army or my family, it feels immediate. Surely I command that? Nagasena smiled. It feels immediate because the chain of causes is swift. But if you examine carefully, you will see that intention itself is a conditioned event, not an independent master. Just as the archer's decision to shoot is conditioned by training, desire, and the target, so your choice is a link in a vast web of causes. To make it clearer, Nagasena asked the king to close his eyes and observe a single thought. The king did so and noticed that as soon as he focused on one thought, it changed or vanished. See, Great King, said Nagasena softly, thoughts are like ripples on a pond. They arise and pass away faster than the eye can follow. There is no thinker behind the thought, only thinking occurring. The king opened his eyes, both awed and unsettled. Then all our pride, our anger, our plans, they are like arrows already flying, ripples already breaking? Yes, Nagasena nodded. Knowing this frees the mind. You still cultivate wholesome conditions, virtue, mindfulness, wisdom, but you release the illusion of absolute control. Without that illusion, there is less grasping, less fear. The garden fell silent again, except for the distant thud of arrows hitting their marks. King Milinda felt a curious relief. Perhaps freedom did not mean controlling every thought, but understanding their nature and letting them go. Story 4, The Mangoes of Karma. Several days later, as the morning sun cast golden light over the royal mango orchard, King Milinda invited Nagasena to walk among the trees. The sweet fragrance of ripening fruit filled the air. Venerable Nagasena, the king said, if there is no permanent self, who reaps the fruits of good and bad deeds? If the doer is never the same from one moment to the next, how can karma be just? Nagasena picked up a fallen mango and held it out. Great king, who planted the seed of this tree? Many years ago, a gardener in my father's time, replied the king. And is that gardener the same person today as he was then? No, he may be old or even dead. Yet the fruit still ripens, linked to the act of planting. The mango does not ask whether the planter remains the same. The law of cause and effect continues regardless. The king listened as the monk continued. Karma works like this orchard. Every deed of body, speech, and mind is a seed. Some ripen quickly, some after years or lifetimes. The one who experiences the result is not identical to the one who acted, yet there is continuity like seed to tree to fruit. They paused beneath a heavy branch. Nagasena invited the king to look closely at the fruit. Notice how many conditions were needed: soil, rain, sunlight, the unseen life of roots and insects. Karma, too, is not a single cause, but a network. What we inherit is the dynamic result of many interwoven actions. King Milinda thought of his own life, victories, mistakes, and unspoken intentions. So even a fleeting thought of anger or generosity is a seed that may ripen long after the moment has passed. Exactly, said Nagasena. This is why mindfulness matters. Each moment is a chance to plant seeds of wisdom and compassion. And when we truly see that, we no longer wonder who the owner is. We simply live with care, knowing every act echoes in the vast field of being. The king bent to pick a ripe mango, feeling its weight and fragrance. From a tiny seed, a forest of consequences. Nagasena smiled, and the sweetest fruits come from seeds of kindness and understanding. Walking back through the orchard, King Milinda felt a quiet resolve. He could not control the past, but he could choose the seeds he planted now. And that freedom, he sensed, was the very heart of karma. Story 5, The Stream of Time. The monastery's bell sounded once, twice, 3 times, slow, steady notes dissolving into the morning air. King Milinda walked beside Venerable Nagasena along a shaded path. Dew clung to the grass. The day had not yet chosen its heat. For a while they said nothing. Only the small sounds of life, sparrows, a wooden bucket, sandals on stone. Time as a flow, not a thing. Venerable Nagasena, the king began at last, we have spoken of self and continuity, yet time still troubles me. I am a ruler. Decisions demand foresight. Regrets pull me backward. When I plan, the future rules me. When I remember, the past binds me. Tell me plainly, what is truly real among past, present, and future? Nagasena touched a leaf and released it. It spun and settled on the path. Great king, have you stood by a river at daybreak? The surface looks smooth, but it is never the same water twice. Past, present, future are like that. The river is a continuous appearance. Its essence is ceaseless change. The king smiled faintly. Heraclitus among the Greeks said something similar. One cannot step into the same river twice. Nagasena inclined his head. Wise people, wherever they are born, discover the same truth. But let us look more closely. What you call past is no longer here, only memory and traces. What you call future has not come. It is anticipation. The only direct contact is the present flow. Yet even the present is not a fixed point. It is a dancing edge, arising and vanishing faster than we can grasp. The Three Illusions of Time. They arrived at the river beyond the monastery wall. The current slid around a cluster of rocks and broke into silver tongues. "Great King," said Nagasena, "notice three illusions that bind the mind to time. 1. The illusion of a solid past. We decorate it with nostalgia or stain it with regret, as if it still exists. But it is only impressions stored in the mind. When you revisit a memory, you do not travel in time. You experience a present moment image. If the image is painful, meet it with compassion. If it is sweet, meet it with non-clinging. 2. The illusion of a guaranteed future. We build castles or prisons out of expectations. The future is important for responsibility, but dangerous for identity. We are not residents of tomorrow. 3. The illusion of a steady present. We try to freeze the now into a possession, my moment. But the present is a verb, not a thing. It is happening, not owned." King Milinda listened, feeling the river's air cooling his face. "If the present cannot be held, how does one live?" "Like a skilled ferryman," said Nagasena. "He does not try to stop the river. He faces downstream, reading currents, adjusting the oar. Mindfulness, sati, is that oar. Wisdom, panya, is knowing where to steer. Effort, virya, is the steady stroke. With these, one travels well, even though the water never stands still." Acting responsibly in a moving present. The king sat on a flat stone. "In my court, I am judged by results. If I release the past and loosen the future, will I not become careless?" Nagasena smiled. "On the contrary, attachment to outcomes dulls clarity. When you act from a mind entangled in yesterday and tomorrow, you carry 2 extra weights. Put them down and today's action becomes precise. The farmer who stares only at next year's harvest neglects the seed in his hand." He continued, "Responsibility belongs not to a permanent self, but to the continuity of intention. When one intends harm, one plants a seed. That stream of intention conditions future moments until it is understood and transformed. Justice and compassion are not enemies. The middle way is to protect the world while freeing the heart." Meeting timelessness. The king drew a line in the sand with a twig, then a second line beside it that curved. "These are like time," he mused. "The straight line is my habit, forcing events to match my plan. The curved one is the actual river." Nagasena laughed softly. "When rulers insist that the river be straight, floods follow. When practitioners insist that meditation feel a certain way, frustration follows. Time is curved by conditions. Meet it with flexibility, and it becomes a teacher." Children released paper boats into the current, saluting the king. "Look," said Nagasena. "They play, yet the boats move with the current. Practice is like that, innocent, responsive, not rigid." At the monastery gate, the king paused. "One last thing, what then is eternity?" "Not endless time," said Nagasena, "but freedom from the tyranny of time. When craving ceases, when the mind does not cling to past or future or the present itself, there is peace. The Blessed One called it nibbana, unbinding. It is not far away in years, it is near when grasping drops." They stood quietly, 2 figures in a changing morning. The bell sounded again, not the same sound as before, not entirely different. King Milinda felt his mind like the river now, moving, clear, unsurprised by change. He bowed. "I begin to see. The present is not a cage but a raft. And you are learning to row," said Nagasena. A breeze moved across the water, and the leaf that had fallen earlier lifted, spun, and was gone, one moment giving itself to another, neither lost nor held. Story 6, The Elephant's Footprint. A week passed. The rains had washed the courtyard clean. King Milinda returned with a scroll in his hand, notes from scribes who tried to summarize the Dhamma he had been studying. Lines of doctrines and lists trailed down the page like vines. "Venerable Nagasena," he said with a half-smile, "the teachings are vast, precepts, meditations, cosmology, abhidhamma, stories of former lives. My scholars argue about which is highest. Tell me, if a person has only limited time, where should he place his whole heart?" Nagasena gestured for them to sit beneath the great banyan. A herd of elephants grazed beyond the far wall, massive forms, gentle and deliberate. "Great king," he said, "in the forest one might find many tracks, deer, boar, jackal. But when an elephant passes, all other tracks are contained within its footprint. So too with the Dhamma. The Four Noble Truths contain all the rest." Living the Four Noble Truths. The king leaned forward. "Speak them not as a list, but as a lived path." "Very well," said Nagasena. First truth. Dukkha, the unease that pervades conditioned life. It is not only the pain of injury or loss, but the subtle friction even in pleasure, because pleasure depends on fragile conditions. It is the ache you feel when a sweet moment begins to fade, the grasping that appears as soon as joy arises. The king nodded slowly. Memories came, feasts that left him oddly empty, victories that tasted of iron the next day. Second truth, the arising of dukkha, craving, tanha. Craving is thirst, thirst to acquire, to become, or to get rid of. Listen carefully. Craving is not the same as wholesome aspiration. You can aim skillfully without being enslaved by the outcome. Craving insists the world must align with me. Wisdom allows the world to be the world. Third truth, the cessation of dukkha. When craving ceases, freedom is known. This is not nihilism. It is not the death of joy. It is the death of compulsion, like laying down a heavy pack you did not realize you were carrying. And fourth truth, the path, the Noble Eightfold Path. Right view, intention, speech, action, livelihood, effort, mindfulness, concentration. This is how one walks from bondage to release. The path in a ruler's life. The king traced the 8 points with his finger on the dirt. Explain them as a ruler might practice, not as a monk alone. Right view, Nagasena said, is seeing cause and effect clearly. A ruler who blames fate when he harvests the fruit of his own policies lacks right view. Right intention is the resolve to act without ill will or cruelty. Right speech, words that are true, useful, timely, and kind. A sharp truth without kindness wounds. A kind falsehood corrodes trust. Right action, restraint from killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct, protecting the vulnerable. Right livelihood, earnings that do not harm beings. A kingdom grows stable when its prosperity does not feed on addiction or violence. Right effort, guarding the mind, preventing unwholesome states from arising, abandoning those that have arisen, cultivating wholesome states, maintaining them. Right mindfulness, remembering to remember, body, feelings, mind, and mental objects seen clearly as they are, not as rumor or fear paints them. Right concentration, collecting the mind so it becomes pliant and bright, capable of deep insight. The king breathed out, "It is vast yet ordered." Practice as living strength. "Take one step at a time," said Nagasena. "The path is walked in the present. If you miss a step, you do not start from the palace again. You simply take the next step now." A young elephant approached the wall, curious, tossing dust over its back. Nagasena smiled. "Consider discipline. People fear it as a cage, but true discipline is like the elephant's skin. Thick enough to meet the world without injury, sensitive enough to feel the smallest breeze. Without discipline, we chafe against the world and call it the world's fault." King Milinda asked, "And meditation?" "I sit, the mind runs. I chase it, it runs faster." "Chasing is more running," said Nagasena. "Instead, widen attention. Let the breath be the anchor. When thoughts come, greet them as travelers. They do not live here. If joy arises, do not grasp. If grief arises, do not drown. This is the middle way in the temple of the mind." "Is Nibbana far?" the king whispered. "Not far in distance," Nagasena replied, "only far in stubbornness. When the heart grows tired of thirst, it rests. It no longer bargains with reality. Then a quiet brightness appears, not owned, not produced. It is known by letting go." Shash! The footprint that holds the sky. Somewhere beyond the wall, the matriarch lifted her foot and set it down. The print was broad and sure, pooling a little rainwater. A dragonfly touched it and flew on. Nagasena pointed. "There is your reminder. Wherever you walk, place your steps where suffering ends. Choose speech that reduces harm today. Choose a livelihood that does not poison the stream. Choose friendships that incline the heart toward generosity and courage. This is the noble path as a ruler, a merchant, a parent, as a human being. The king looked at the footprint filling with reflected sky. He saw clouds moving in that small pool, entire weathers passing through a single step. In that footprint, he said softly, the whole sky appears. The Dhamma is like that, said Nagasena. Simple, yet it holds the vastness. If you live from the four truths, every doctrine finds its place without argument. Every method becomes serviceable. Even doubt becomes a teacher, for it sends you back to careful seeing. The king rose, rolling the scroll and tucking it away. I asked for the highest. You gave me the ground beneath every step. Then walk, said Nagasena, rising too, and let your people see an elephant's kindness in a king's strength. They bowed to each other. On the far plain, the herd began to move, leaving prints that would fade by evening, and yet lead anyone with eyes to where the path truly goes. Story 7, The Ocean and the Drop. The first blush of dawn colored the horizon as King Milinda and Venerable Nagasena walked toward the shore beyond the city walls. The sky was still a deep indigo, but a line of crimson pulsed where the sea met the heavens. The air was fresh, carrying the faint scent of salt and seaweed. From afar came the rhythmic thunder of waves collapsing onto the sand, a music both ancient and unending. As they reached the beach, the king paused. Cool grains of sand shifted beneath his sandals, and the ocean stretched before him, vast, shimmering, alive. He watched a wave roll in, foam curling like white lace around his feet, and then slide back into the deep, in the infinite sea. Venerable Nagasena, he said, his voice tinged with awe, your teachings on karma and continuity are profound. Yet, I wonder, when I consider the immense suffering of the world and the boundless desires of humankind, how can a single deed of goodness matter? What is one drop of kindness in an ocean of craving and grief? Nagasena bent down, picked up a small, glistening seashell, and held it between his fingers. Great king, suppose you stand before this mighty ocean and pour in a single drop of fresh water. Will that drop remain separate or disappear? It will surely merge with the ocean, Milinda replied. One could never find it again. Exactly, said Nagasena. The drop does not remain distinct, but neither is it lost. Its essence becomes part of the whole. So it is with every wholesome deed. A single act of compassion or generosity does not vanish. It enters the great ocean of merit and continues to nourish all life, even unseen. Rivers become the ocean. The king folded his arms, considering this. But the drop is so small compared to the sea. Can such a tiny contribution truly change anything? The monk's eyes reflected the early light. Consider the rivers that feed this vast ocean, he said. Each river begins as a trickle from melting snow or a hidden spring. Without those countless streams, the ocean would dry. Likewise, liberation for countless beings depends on countless small acts of goodness. Your single drop may one day join a current that shifts the tide for generations. They walked slowly along the shore. The sun's rim now rose, sending paths of gold across the water. Fishermen launched narrow boats into the surf, their laughter mixing with the cries of gulls overhead. These men cast their nets day after day, Nagasena said. Some catches are large, others small, but over the seasons, the patient harvest feeds cities. In the same way, a lifetime of small, consistent virtues, kind words, fair judgment, shared bread feeds the world's awakening. Merit beyond memory. The king stooped to pick up a handful of wet sand and watched it stream through his fingers. Yet history often remembers only great warriors or mighty builders, not the quiet givers. Is that fair? Nagasena smiled softly. The ocean does not publish records, yet every river is received. The law of cause and effect needs no monument. Whether celebrated or hidden, each drop of goodness expands the boundless sea of compassion. The world's memory fades, but the Dharma's accounting never errs. They stopped where a group of children were building intricate sand towers near the waterline. A playful wave swept in, tumbling the towers into formless heaps. The children squealed with delight and began again without complaint. Milinda watched them, a gentle smile forming. Perhaps what matters is not how long a tower stands, but how the act of building shapes the child's joy and patience. Could it be the same with our virtues? Indeed, Nagasena replied. The value lies in the heart that gives, not in the permanence of the structure. When you give or forgive, even for a moment, the mind is molded toward freedom. The outer form may pass, but the inner transformation remains. Every drop holds the whole. He scooped up a small amount of seawater in his palm. Taste this, great king. Milinda sipped a drop and winced slightly at the salt. It is briny. Even this single drop contains the ocean's essence, Nagasena observed. Likewise, a single moment of true compassion contains the essence of enlightenment. It holds the same salt of wisdom as the vast sea of Buddha's awakening. The king stood silent, listening to the wave's eternal rhythm. He thought of his daily duties, decrees signed, disputes settled, meals shared with the poor. Small acts, he realized, but each a drop in an immeasurable sea. Then, nothing good is wasted, even if no one notices. Nothing, said Nagasena firmly. The Dharma is like this ocean, impartial and vast. It welcomes every river, remembers every raindrop. To live each day as one who adds a drop of clarity and kindness is to participate in the boundless. Practice, becoming the ocean. The monk invited a brief practice. Close your eyes, great king. Breathe as the tide breathes, rising, falling. With each inhalation, silently think, may my heart be as wide as the sea. With each exhalation, may all beings be free from suffering. This is how one drop becomes the ocean. When Milinda opened his eyes, the sky was ablaze with sunrise. A new understanding flowed in him, deep and quiet. His small deeds, like those of countless others, would merge with an infinite compassion. None would be lost. Nagasena concluded, Great king, live each day as if adding a drop to the great sea of merit. When this body falls away, that ocean will carry you and all beings toward the farther shore of freedom. Story 8, The Salt in the Cup. The following afternoon, the royal gardens were heavy with the scent of jasmine and ripening fruit. A small fountain sent thin streams of water into a stone basin, and bees hovered lazily among the flowers. King Milinda sat with Venerable Nagasena under a wide tamarind tree, a gentle breeze playing with their robes. Bitterness of regret. The king's brow was furrowed. Venerable Nagasena, he began softly, even as I learn these truths, old regrets visit me. I remember judgments that caused suffering, commands given in anger, years when greed guided policy. I make amends where I can, but memories return like ghosts. Will these stains forever poison my mind? Nagasena listened without haste. He motioned to a servant and quietly requested 2 cups, a jug of spring water, and a small pouch of salt. A simple demonstration. When the items arrived, Nagasena poured cool water into 1 cup and into a large clay basin. He lifted the salt pouch and let a generous pinch fall into the cup. Great king, he said, please taste this. Milinda sipped and grimaced. It is bitter. Then Nagasena added an equal pinch of salt into the large basin and stirred. Now taste the basin water. The king dipped a ladle and drank. A smile spread across his face. It is still fresh, even sweet. Do you see? Said Nagasena. The same amount of salt makes 1 cup bitter, but hardly changes a great basin. In the same way, a narrow heart is easily poisoned by small mistakes, while a vast heart remains pure even when touched by many sorrows. Expanding the heart. Milinda set the cup down thoughtfully. So the problem is not only the salt of misdeeds, but the size of the vessel, my mind itself. Exactly, Nagasena replied. Expand the vessel, broaden the mind with loving kindness, patience, and compassion. Meditation and acts of generosity are rivers that feed the inner lake. As the heart widens, past wrongs dissolve, like a handful of salt in the ocean. The king frowned slightly. But what of grave mistakes, those that injured thousands? Can mere expansion of heart wash those away? And what of those who still suffer and cannot forgive? The monk nodded. This is a subtle point. Expanding the heart does not erase the law of cause and effect. Consequences still unfold, and one must meet them with courage, offering reparations, guiding justice with compassion. But inner bitterness, the constant self-punishment, fades when the mind grows vast. It is the difference between carrying a stone in a small cup and placing it in a wide river. The weight is the same, yet the burden is transformed. Rivers that remain sweet. They strolled along a path lined with flowering shrubs. Sunlight flickered like liquid gold through the leaves. Think of the great rivers, the Ganges, Yamuna, and countless others, Nagasena continued. All carry impurities, soil, fallen leaves, even waste. Yet their sheer flow keeps them sweet and clear. So too with a heart nourished by boundless love. Impurities enter but cannot dominate. He invited the king to a simple practice. Close your eyes, great king. Breathe gently. With each breath, send thoughts of loving kindness first to yourself. May I be free from hatred and fear, then to a friend, then to a stranger, then to one with whom you have conflict. Finally, let that kindness radiate to all beings like a river widening into the sea. After a few minutes, Milinda opened his eyes. The garden seemed brighter, the air lighter. I felt my heart stretch outward, he said softly. Old images lost their sharpness. It was as if they were floating downstream. That is the power of metta, Nagasena replied. You do not deny past actions, you transform your relationship to them. Their sharpness dissolves in the ocean of compassion. In this way, the heart becomes unassailable. The art of expansion. The king looked again at the two vessels, the small cup and the wide basin reflecting sky and trees. The lesson is clear, he said. I cannot always reduce the salt of the past, but I can enlarge the water of the heart until bitterness disappears. Nagasena smiled. Exactly. Purification is not the art of erasure, but of expansion. When the mind is oceanic, remorse turns to wisdom, and even those you have harmed may one day be touched by the vastness of your goodwill. A soft wind rustled the tamarind leaves. Bees hummed over blossoms without haste. Nagasena concluded, Great King, remember, the path is not about becoming someone who never errs, but about becoming someone whose heart is too spacious for bitterness to rule. Expand the vessel, and even the deepest regrets will dissolve into peace. Story 9, The Wise Tortoise. A warm afternoon sun dappled the stone paths of the monastery as King Milinda returned for another dialogue. Birds trilled in the banyan trees, and a distant drumbeat from the city festival pulsed faintly through the still air. The king sighed as he and Venerable Nagasena settled beneath a bodhi tree. Venerable Nagasena, he said, life is full of noise, both outer and inner. My court overflows with petitions and arguments. Merchants shout prices, soldiers drill with clashing swords. Even when I am alone, thoughts clamor louder than any market. How can one remain calm and unshaken in such a world? Nagasena looked toward the garden wall where a tortoise moved slowly among the stones, its shell catching the afternoon light. Great King, may I tell you a fable? Please, Milinda said, intrigued. The fable. In a quiet forest, Nagasena began, there once lived a wise tortoise. One day, hunters entered the forest with sharp spears. They spotted the tortoise and rushed forward. But the tortoise, sensing danger, did not flee wildly. Instead, it calmly drew its head, tail, and legs inside its sturdy shell and remained utterly still. The hunters circled, prodded, and finally gave up, leaving the creature unharmed. Milinda smiled. A clever animal. But how does that help us who cannot carry a shell? The wise, Nagasena replied, possess a different kind of shell, mindfulness and loving awareness. When the world's arrows of noise, anger, and temptation fly, they withdraw their senses inward, guarding the gates of the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, body, and mind. Like the tortoise, they find safety in their own true home. guarding the senses. The king reflected, "Yet I am a ruler, I must see and hear. How can I withdraw without neglecting my duties?" Withdrawal, Nagasena explained, is not escape from responsibility. It is the art of selective openness. Just as the tortoise does not abandon the forest but wisely retreats when danger nears, a wise person engages the world but knows when to rest in inner stillness. To guard the senses is to choose what enters the heart. They sat quietly as a gentle breeze stirred the Bodhi leaves. Nagasena continued, "Every day the mind is bombarded. Harsh words, enticing images, restless plans. If we do not guard the senses, agitation grows like weeds. But when we return again and again to the breath, to awareness of the body, to the simple fact of being alive, we dwell in an unassailable refuge." A practice of inner retreat. He invited the king to try. "Close your eyes, great king. Feel the breath move in and out. With each inhale, silently note arriving. With each exhale, resting. Let thoughts come and go like distant sounds in the forest. This is the tortoise drawing in its limbs, not in fear, but in wise care." After several minutes, Milinda opened his eyes. The festival drums still beat faintly beyond the walls, but they seemed far away, harmless. "I felt a quiet I have not known," he said softly. "The noise remains, yet it no longer rules me." Nagasena nodded. "This is the power of guarding the senses. You do not need to silence the world to know peace. You need only keep the heart unshaken. Like a tortoise in its shell, you carry calm wherever you go. The true fortress." The king gazed at the slow-moving tortoise now emerging from its shell to nibble on a leaf. "So the true fortress is not of stone or soldiers, but of mindfulness and loving awareness." "Yes," Nagasena said, "this is the inner citadel no enemy can breach. Come home to the breath, dwell in awareness. Peace is found within, and from that peace, wise action flows outward." Story 10, The Lotus Above the Mud. A light rain had fallen the night before, leaving the monastery garden fragrant and glistening. Lotus flowers in the nearby pond stood radiant, their pink petals unstained despite the muddy water that nourished them. King Milinda arrived at dawn, his cloak damp with dew. He greeted Venerable Nagasena with a bow and a quiet question. "Venerable Nagasena, I understand now how to guard the senses, yet another doubt remains. We live in a world thick with greed, corruption, and temptation. Is it truly possible to dwell among such conditions and remain pure? Must one flee to the mountains to live undefiled?" Nagasena gestured toward the lotus pond. "Great king, look there. See how the lotus rises from the mud, yet its petals remain untouched and fragrant." Milinda studied the blossoms. Drops of water beaded on their petals and rolled off without a trace. "It is indeed wondrous, but what gives the lotus this power?" "The lotus," said Nagasena, "grows from roots deep in mud and water, yet a subtle wax on its petals repels the dirt. Likewise, one who practices virtue, mindfulness, and wisdom can live in the world, engaging in trade, governance, family life, without being stained by its impurities. Purity is not about location, it is about orientation of heart." They walked along the pond's edge as morning light danced on the water. "Imagine a merchant," as Nagasena continued, "who deals honestly in a marketplace filled with deception. His surroundings test him daily, but his integrity protects him. Or a mother who raises children amid gossip and greed yet teaches them kindness and truth. Such people are lotuses in the world's mud." Milinda pondered aloud, "But even a lotus depends on mud for nourishment. Does that mean we need the very difficulties we wish to avoid?" "In a way, yes," Nagasena said. "Without mud, there is no lotus. Without challenges, virtues cannot blossom. Temptation, insult, and hardship become the soil in which patience, generosity, and insight grow. To curse the mud is to forget that it feeds the flower." The king smiled faintly. "So the world's turmoil can be a hidden ally." "Indeed," the monk affirmed. When the mind is trained, every circumstance becomes a field of practice. Praise and blame, gain and loss, pleasure and pain, these are like sun and rain. The lotus of wisdom uses them all and remains unstained. He invited a brief contemplation. Close your eyes, great king. Picture the lotus rising through dark water toward sunlight. With each breath, silently say, "May I live in this world with a heart as pure as the lotus." Feel each breath lift you above the mud of fear and craving. After a few minutes, Milinda opened his eyes, the scent of wet earth and blossoms rich around them. "I see," he said softly. "Purity is not a gift from isolation, but the art of meeting life without clinging or aversion." "Yes," said Nagasena. "A lotus does not despise the mud, it transforms it. So too can we transform the world's conditions into nourishment for awakening. Purity is possible anywhere, because it is a matter of mind, not surroundings." The king gazed again at the shining blossoms. A deep peace settled in him. He knew he could return to his court, to politics and people, and remain unsoiled like the lotus that blooms above the mud. As the sun climbed higher, King Milinda and Venerable Nagasena sat quietly beside the lotus pond. 10 dialogues had unfolded, 10 doors to freedom. Nagasena spoke softly. "Great king, we have walked through many images, the chariot with no permanent self, the lamp of continuity, the arrow of thought, the mangoes of karma, the flowing river of time, the elephant's footprint of truth, the ocean receiving every drop, the great basin dissolving salt, the tortoise withdrawing in wisdom, and now the lotus unstained by mud. Different forms, one taste, freedom of mind." Milinda felt these images alive within him. "I see now. I am not a fixed self. Life flows like a river. Thoughts fly like arrows and pass, deeds ripen like mango seeds. My heart can be as vast as the ocean, as calm as a tortoise, as pure as a lotus. True freedom is inner freedom." They sat for a long while in shared silence, the kind where words have already done their work. Finally, Nagasena said, "Take these stories with you, not as ornaments for the mind, but as practices for daily life. Guard the senses. Plant wholesome seeds. Let every small act be a drop in the ocean of compassion. Meet the world's mud with the heart of a lotus." The king bowed deeply. "These teachings will live in me and in the people I serve. This dialogue is not an end, but a beginning. Dear listener, which of these 10 stories speaks most deeply to you?" Pause for a breath. Let the image settle in your heart. If you wish to keep traveling this path, subscribe to Awaken Echoes for more timeless wisdom, long-form journeys every week, and daily shorts to keep your heart light. Share your reflections in the comments. Your insights may become another drop that nourishes the ocean of awakening.